Just in case my eyes start nudging off.
Yeah.
What time does it start?
Hello.
Hi.
Can you try speaking? I can hear people, I just can't hear anything.
Can you hear anything? Can you hear anything from the...
It's okay.
Yeah? Oh, yeah, that's okay.
That's good, yeah. So I think we can...
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. Wonderful. I think that's
Superb.
We've already joined.
Yeah,
3 people.
that's great.
What time are the drinks?
Well, basically when this is finished.
So sort of walk straight, check the people out.
Are you filming now?
Your big screen. It's past, so if you, I mean, literally any time.
Hello, good evening, everybody. Are you ready? I haven't been teaching for like 5 months, so it's quite nice I can still get everyone to be quiet. I quite enjoy that, thank you. So welcome to this evening's presidential lecture. My name is Fiona Sheriff. I am the Vice President this year, and haven't I got great footsteps to follow in for next year. So a little bit about Catherine before we begin. She has been teaching for a phenomenal 32 years. 27 of those have been spent at King Alf's, which is phenomenal in itself. I have been very fortunate to work with Catherine a number of times, working with her on tutor-to-you resources, writing for Wide World magazine, which is now really sadly ended, being a CPD presenter for the GA, writing for OU and HODA, and of course the fantastic book which was released recently, which she co-edited with Jennifer Monk, which is What is Geography Teaching Now? And we had a lovely moment for that earlier, where we were signing each other's copies if you saw us being super duper geeky. So without further ado, I would like to introduce Catherine, President for this year, for her phenomenal lecture. Thank you.
Thank you ever so much for coming along. It means so much to me that I'm looking out there and seeing so many geographers just coming here today and joining in and being part of the community of geographers that are so keen to make a difference. So I'm going to start by telling you a little bit about me. I'm going to be very self-indulgent and talk a little bit about my background because some of you might have noticed by the way I talk, I'm from the West Country. I know that's a surprise. And my family is actually Cornish, and you can see a picture there of my great-granddad. My great-granddad is there on his horse and plough, and as time went on, pressures meant that he needed to try out a tractor. And the tractor didn't cope with the slopes, and the tractor rolled, and he said, we're not going to have tractors here, I'm going to keep on with my horse and plough. But obviously that couldn't go on forever, so he ended up selling up the farm, and now where that farm was is something that you might recognise up here. Does some of you recognise Great Drurbin on Sky Tip from Cornwall? A few people are nodding. So yeah, so that's where my family farm was back in the day. And so we had farmers in our family in the past, but then China clay has been such an important industry in the St Austell area. So both of my granddads worked in the clay industry. And we've got a picture there of my granddad, who I think that was actually on his retirement, and he was receiving his, leaving gift. And both of my granddads worked in China clay. My granddads were monitor operators, which is a great big high power hose that blasts at the hillside and it washes the China clay away, mixed up with other material, and then you settle it out so you get the China clay. And they weren't just my granddads working. We've actually got a picture in that photograph there of Michael Patrick. You know, this is in St Austell at this time. This was what you did. You left school, you got a job working in the China clay industry. You can see the bus there, my granddad's in that picture. You know, you go for days out. You might go as far as somewhere like Plymouth. And so life, you know, in my family was very much rooted in the China clay industry. And in fact, my granddad's also worked at the Delver Pit, which some of you might know better as the Eden Project. So that was very much the situation for my family going back a couple of generations. But my mum and dad both grew up in the same road in near a place called Penwithwick on the edge of St Austell, and they had aspirations. They wanted to be able to get on. They wanted to be able to do jobs beyond working in China clay. And so they had to get out of Cornwall to be able to get on. And that was quite a big thing to be doing. So my mum is pictured there with her class when she went to technical college. So she had to put a lot of effort in to go into technical college. She had to walk from the village, where she lived outside the village, walk to Penwithwick, get on the bus to St Austell, get on the train to Camborne, and then she had to get a bus at the other end to get to Camborne Tech, so that she could do her course and then do it all the other way around. And she was given a grant to be able to pay for the transport, otherwise that would not have been able to happen. So she got her qualifications in everything to do. She got audio typing, shorthand typing, all these different qualifications, and then was able to, when she was living outside of Cornwall, being able to get lots of different jobs that she thoroughly enjoyed. Now, my dad's way of getting out of Cornwall and leaving behind China clay was to join the RAF. So he's in the back row there, because whilst I am very short, my mum is tiny, my dad was very tall, so he's in the back row there, and he joined the RAF, and he served for 8 years. And through doing that, whilst he hadn't come out of school with formal qualifications, he was able to gain a lot of experience working in radar maintenance, which then gave him a massive advantage when he came out of the RAF in finding a job. So I grew up outside of, I didn't grow up in Cornwall, I grew up near Weston-super-Mare, and I was born in the 1970s. Oh, sorry, I've gone too far. I was born in the 1970s. You can see me pictured there in front of my Auntie Gillian there. I'm in a rather fetching 1970s style trouser suit. And so, you know, 70s, interesting time in society, a lot of changes going on. And like I say, my parents had settled down in the area sort of between Bristol and Weston-super-Mare, and I was really lucky because I had all those opportunities that were available to someone living just outside of a big city like Bristol. But I could still go in the holidays to Cornwall and go to all the beaches. Absolutely fantastic situation. I decided to be a teacher, basically. I don't remember a time when I didn't want to be a teacher. So I was at nursery school and they asked what I wanted to be. I was going to be a teacher. One of my favourite toys there, I bet some of you had that toy when you were young, good old Fisher-Price desk. I would teach my toys using my little desk. I was always going to be a teacher. And it does make me reflect now, why was I so keen to be a teacher? Was it because other careers weren't really visible to me? Did I look at the teachers and think, that's something that you can, like, you know, you can do, which is going to be like a profession? Did I think I'm going to be able to boss people around? But it was a very visible career to me, and it was something that I very much wanted to do, but I wanted to be a history teacher. I thought that history was going to be the cool subject to do. I think I was drawn in by the idea of chronology, the narrative, and so I was going to be a history teacher, always secondary. I was always going to be a secondary teacher, like I said, when I was tiny. But it's very interesting to reflect on why we make the choices that we make. What is it that influences our choices? So, like I say, brilliant growing up on the edge of Bristol, having those connections to Cornwall, having an extremely supportive family. But other things also shaped my worldview. One of the things that shaped my worldview was school trips. So I'm in the middle there, and that's my friends Christina and Julia. That was our last year in junior school, you know, when you go off and do your camp, and we went to Swanage. It was amazing. We stayed in the youth hostel. Some of you might have been there. Absolutely incredible place. And school trips took me to places that I wouldn't normally have gone. I went on that trip to Swanage and we went to Dilston Country Park, and I saw the big stone globe. I'm sure lots of you have seen that. I loved it. I was just, wow, that's amazing. Massive stone globe. You can stand behind it. You're looking out at the sea, and it's just absolutely brilliant. So I was so inspired by that. But on the same trip, we had a very unfortunate experience. We went to Studland Bay on the day there was an oil spill, and our teachers were trying to shield us from this. They were like, you know, quickly, let's walk quickly past this. Don't look, it stank. It's, you know, so visceral, the memory of the smell. There were birds caught up in it. The bus had dropped us off, you see, and was picking us up the other end, and there weren't mobile phones, so the teachers couldn't just, you know, phone up and say, quick, come get us again. But that also was a fascinating experience for me, because in one trip I was seeing beauty in the world, but I was also seeing problems in the world and seeing how distressing it could be when you have this conflict between human use and, you know, the physical environment. I went to secondary school. I was very lucky to be able to go on a trip to France. I went to the Netherlands, and I did the Bristol-Bordeaux exchange, which, looking back on it, blows your mind, because they basically put us in a French family's house for 3 weeks. So it was just, off you go, you'll be fine. And when you look back on it, it's just like, wow. But I learned a lot of French, because all the French the family that I was staying with knew basically was swear words. So I had to, like, you know, all the English, sorry. And so I had to, like, you know, use my French a lot. So my world was being widened out. You learn so much from your family, but then school gives you that wider view. But then my family also had an opportunity to give me a wider view. My dad had become a computer engineer in the 1960s, when computers were rooms that you'd walk into, and you'd have valves in them, you'd have to swap bits out and put bits in. And he was working for the company that had the contract for British Airways, so we got staff discounts on flights. We'd never used it, and then we were told that the company no longer had the contracts after the next year. It was going to get taken away. My parents were like, wow, we've got to use this. Now, we had never been abroad, and you might think that maybe we'd have gone to, like, you know, New York or something. No, they planned a holiday to the USA. The first time we went to Florida for 3 weeks and drove around and stayed in all different places. And I said to my mum recently, how did you do that without the internet? How did you you've never been abroad, and you suddenly decide to go for 3 weeks to Florida? It was incredible. It was the most incredible experience. We loved it so much that we went back again when I was 15, and that's my mum and dad there in Arizona. And you can see my family there, my mum, dad, myself, and my brother Glyn. And we just had amazing adventures as a family. And I think that I learned so much from that, and also the practicalities of organising it and seeing what my parents were doing. You pick up a lot, don't you, when you're a child? You're learning all the time. And I learned a lot from those experiences about other places, but also about getting the most out of experiences. But another thing that took me outside of my family and taught me a lot was girl guiding. And you can see me there at the front of that little line there. Those of you that are much younger, you're probably laughing at the uniforms we wore. That's my range guide uniform. Have you ever seen anything less practical in your life? You know, the Venture Scouts are there with their, like, you know, sort of khaki shirts and their, like, you know, out ready for action, and we're there in, like, pencil skirts and, like, V-neck tops. And but despite that, being a guide was an amazing experience, especially being a range guide. And I fell in with a gang of range guides who were the most just amazing young women, and they taught me so much. They were such strong young women. They had really strong views. We'd talk about things for hours, and they would challenge, you know, what I was thinking. And I just really think that the relationships that I had with people when I was in the guiding movement, again, took me outside my comfort zone, and took me into understanding things in different ways. So guiding really made a massive difference to me. Yeah, school made a difference too. I went to Backwell School just outside of Bristol, and I had some great teachers who made a difference. And this is when I decided to not be a history teacher, but to be a geography teacher. And it's all Mr. George's fault. And it's amazing how often I come across people and they've gone to Backwell School and they're like, you know, oh my goodness, did Mr. George teach you? He was my inspiration. And then he went to work in nearby Churchill School, and people say to me, like, oh, it was Mr. George that convinced me to be a geography teacher. He was just so inspirational. So Mr. George was amazing. You will be surprised to hear that I was really quiet when I was at school. I was really shy. And I was that little brown-haired girl that nobody could remember the name of. And Mr. George, you know, actually took an interest. And when you're that little brown-haired girl that nobody remembers the name of, and someone takes an interest, and it's like, do you know what, you're really good at geography. You're like, oh, it's like the sun shining on you. It's wonderful. So he was such a good teacher, and he really brought the word to life. But also, I had a tutor called Mr. Martin. He was very different. He was a PE teacher, very dour, and he was very dry in his sense of humour. And he was my tutor, and I was always trying to get out of doing things like tutor times by volunteering to go work in the library and things like that. And he had me sussed, and he would just make all these like jokes. And he would say like, so Catherine, have you planned your pension scheme yet? Because he knew I was always scheming and always thinking about the future. And he made me feel that I could take on the world. He made me feel that I had, you know, something about me that would mean I could go out there and I could do different things. So I decided to go into geography, but then there was a little bit of a hitch because my worst A-level result was geography. I actually got an E in A-level geography. I was predicting then. It all went horribly wrong, not quite sure what happened. So back in the day, you applied to university with UCA and you applied to Polytechnic with PCAS. And even though I didn't have the grades to get into Plymouth Polytechnic, there were a few of us this had happened to, and they took us. Thank you, Plymouth. So I went along to Plymouth Polytechnic while I was there. It rebranded as Polytechnic Southwest, and by the time I left, it was University of Plymouth. So I had a great experience there. It shows when things sometimes don't go exactly as you were hoping they would, it works out in the end. Yeah, sometimes you think, oh my goodness, this is it. This is stubborn, but it works out in the end. I loved living in Plymouth. It is such a friendly city. And so I decided to stay for my teacher training at the College of St Mark and St John. And that's when I joined the Geographical Association back in 1993. And I went to a school called Plymouth School to do training, and then I went to Bodmin Community School. Any of you that know Cornwall will know Bodmin is an interesting town. It's inland, it faces a lot of challenges with deprivation, but it also has a lot of children that go to the school that live up on Bodmin Moor. It is very, very varied, and it was the most amazing school to train in. It was so inclusive. They worked with the community so closely, thought about the needs of different children and did so much to support those children. And I thought, you know what, this is what's important to me. This is the type of school I want to work in. So very inspired by Bodmin Community School. Now, linking this to what Lee was talking about yesterday in the public lecture, when we're thinking about social mobility, I think my family is a classic example of social mobility. And something which I've been, reading a little bit about called the generational ladder of mobility at work. There is a chap called Clive Hill who writes really interesting blogs, and I saw him writing about this. And he was saying, you know, hold on a moment, teachers. Not everybody is going to go from having, the previous generation working in manual or low-paid jobs and then move suddenly they're at university. That's not going to be right for everybody. Sometimes what actually happens is what happened in my family. My granddad's worked in the manual work, and then my parents had the skills and technical professions, and then myself and my amazing brother Glenn, we were able to go to university and get graduate professions. And it just makes me think sometimes that we need to, as teachers, when we're talking about careers, we need to recognise this, that actually in the past, I've sometimes come across teachers that have been like, oh, you don't want to go and do this, you don't want to do that, you need to go to university. And for some people, that is the right decision. But actually, maybe that step to be a skilled tradesperson is exactly what that person needs. And maybe that's actually a way for them of being socially mobile. And maybe actually in today's climate, maybe that's actually a blooming good idea to be getting a skilled trade. So I think that it's something to think about when we're talking about careers and aspirations to our students. So yeah, so I became a teacher, and this was my first classroom, which it was Holyrood School in Chart in 1994. It wasn't like that when I came to the school. There was a BTEC art and design course, and what you had to do as part of the BTEC art design is you had to find a client that you could produce an artwork for. And there was this lovely young man who was quite shy, who was doing the course, and I heard the art teacher talking in the staff room saying, you know, how are we going to find a client? He's really shy. And I was like, me, can I have some geography on my walls? And you can't see the desert on here because it was around the corner. But I got my room painted and I loved it. Teaching in that classroom was amazing. And it was 11 to 18 comprehensive school, the only school in the town. That idea that I've seen in Bodmin of having that inclusive school was what I wanted, and having students from a wide range of backgrounds. And yeah, I taught geography, and I also taught leisure and tourism. Some of you might remember the days of GMPQ. So yeah, so I was a GMPQ leisure and tourism teacher as well as geography. It's interesting though to think back to what Lee was talking about yesterday. When I started teaching Holyrood, I was teaching students from the 1980 to 1984 birth cohort. Those students there with lines crossover. The students where we're starting to see more downward mobility in families than upward mobility. So it's really interesting to reflect, you know, was I still very gung-ho there with the sort of like, whoa, work hard and everything's going to be great? Yeah, I probably was. I didn't realise that society was changing. And I didn't realise that we would be looking back at that time as the time when we started to see such a big change. So then in 1999, I went to King Alfred School. There's a nice aerial photograph of my school. We have such a lovely site, we're so lucky. And so I went there in 1999. I did not mean to stay there for 27 years. It's just it's a school that you just get really attached to. It is a school where there is a big range of students in terms of social class. You teach everybody from, there's twin towns of Highbridge and Burnham-on-Sea, and it's in Somerset, and I do love being embedded in the community, and the school is absolutely at the heart of the community. The school's also really known for its learning support department and support for students with special educational needs. And yeah, I just love it there. And so, yeah, only meant to stay there for a couple of years and then go on and get promotion. 27 years later, still there. I just love that school and its place in the community. And this little map here illustrates what I'm talking about with the variety of the community. We're going to think about some of these dark blue spots in a moment, but we've got areas there which have got significant deprivation, and we have areas there which are extremely affluent. If you're driving down the M5 motorway, you will see that there is a hill called Brentnall that looks like a volcano, and that's in my catchment area. And if you can afford a house in Brentnall, then well done, because it's a very affluent little village. So I love the fact that I've got a catchment area that's so varied and so absolutely part of the community. So I was at King Alfred's, I was head of geography, and then a very important thing happened in my life. I had a very geographical engagement. I had been talking to my husband for years about a video that some of the more mature members of this audience will definitely remember. You know, the River Tees one? So you've got the River Tees, you go from source to mouth, and you see, yeah, people are like, yeah, I know that one. And there was the original one, was the guy with the draped tight trousers and the curly hair. Was it Bernard? Yeah, Bernard. And then it was done by a younger guy, Elliot, I think it was. And yeah, you know, it's hard to explain to the younger generation the excitement the classes used to feel when I wheeled in the trolley with the television and the video on it, and I put that video cassette in, and up came the River Tees. It was so exciting. So I said to my husband, we were on holiday in Northumbria, and I said, we need to drive down to the Tees because I need to see this amazing place, and I want to see High Falls. So we went to High Falls, And then we walked a little bit further down and saw the other waterfall on the screen there, which has got a little cave behind it. And bless him, the old romantic, he proposed in the little cave there. And we then had our wedding in a watermill, and we went to Niagara Falls on honeymoon. So we've really kept the water theme going. So yeah, I'm very, very lucky, seriously, to have a husband who doesn't just tolerate me being a geography teacher, but really encourages and is really happy to go to different places, explore different places. We went to York. Before we'd gone into the city to be able to look at the beautiful architecture, we'd gone out to the edge to look at the flood defences. So, you know, he just embraces that. He's absolutely great. So, got married in 2000, which makes it easy to remember wedding anniversaries. And then we welcomed Jack into our lives in 2002. And then Megan completed our family in 2006. And they are our world. My family is so important to me. And I'm absolutely chuffed to bits that Jack and Megan are here today. And they've been stewards today, so hopefully they've been able to help you to make this, you know, a really good event. So I'm at this position in my life. I'm the head of geography of my school, a school that I've fallen in love with and I don't really want to move on from. I've got, you know, like a 5-year-old and a 2-year-old, and I'm looking for my next adventure, really. And I didn't really want to go into leadership in my school. I like being in the classroom. I love being in the classroom. I didn't really want to be in the office, you know, dealing with the sort of stuff senior leaders have to. And so I decided, well, I don't know if I can really decide it. I just started doing more for the Geographical Association, wanting to get more involved. But it was actually quite tricky to be able to, you know, find the way in, because this is in the days before you had like the internet, where you could just like send in a little contact form and say, I'd really like to join such and such group. And I wasn't quite sure what to do. I went to a brilliant lecture by Eleanor Rawling, who is an absolute inspiration. And she was saying, you know, people in the audience, the GA needs you. What can you do for the GA? And I thought, you know, I was a bit frustrated. I was like, yeah, you say you need me, but how do I get into this? How do I get more involved? So I went up again, and I was like, Eleanor, I love this lecture, absolutely brilliant. But it's difficult. If you don't know people, if you haven't got the connections, how do you actually get involved? So, Eleanor is a wonderful and very direct woman. She grabbed me by the arm, she marched me out of that lecture theatre, and she took me to probably the first volunteer stand that was there. I was very fortunate, it was the International Special Interest Group stand, and she introduced me to Adam and Kevin were both there, and she basically said, this is Catherine, she's joining your group, something along those lines, and the rest is history. And I'm absolutely delighted that Kevin and Adam are in the audience, so I've just come over a bit emotional, because they mean the world to me, and joining that special interest group has made such an incredible difference to me in my geography career. The group gave me the chance to be involved in so many different projects. I love making educational resources, and Kevin was the chair at the time, and he was like, yes, that's what you love, let's do more of that. So I got to do lots of resource making, but the group used to do study tours, and that was amazing to be involved with. And one of the things I absolutely loved was welcoming overseas visitors, and that was an absolutely incredible experience. If you're sat there thinking, Catherine, you're saying this and I don't know how to get involved, then please can I direct you to, there's a room that's up on floor 2, which has got a different special interest group sitting here, and there's displays being put out, there's QR codes you can use, and so you know, if you're sat there thinking, I want to get involved, then do it. Then do it, you know, get in touch, or just chat to me, or chat to Becky or Fiona, you know, and say, I've got a passion for ICT, I've got a passion for physical geography, and we'll do what we can to be able to connect you up. Joining a volunteer group made a massive, massive difference to me. Now, I've been coming to conferences for a long time, and yeah, you can look at some of those pictures there. You can see how young I look in some of those. And GA conferences have made a big difference to me. Nowadays, we're more connected in some ways through the internet, so you could argue we don't need face-to-face contact as much because we're in touch online, but so many people have said to me today about how much they value the face-to-face nature of this event and how much it means to have those connections. And I just think this is something that the GA do superbly, is having these conferences and connecting people. I attended my first GA conference in Southampton. It must have been in around 1995. I was quite new to teaching, and I have missed very few since. I've probably only missed 3 or 4 since. And you can see these photographs here. You can recognise some of the people in them. And there's also a lot of visitors there from overseas. And you can see there geographers from Dominica, Palestine, China, Tanzania, Kenya, India, Malawi. And one of the wonderful things we did in the International Special Interest Group was to encourage people from around the world to apply for funding to come over for the conference, and then we'd often host them and take them different places and just, you know, try to ensure they had the best experience possible. And that also really made a difference to me, having those connections globally. And I'm just really grateful to everybody that's been involved with those conferences over the years. We've got quite a few past presidents in the audience now. Thank you so much for all those opportunities you've provided for people like myself. So, I keep pressing the wrong bit. So the GA has given me a lot of opportunities beyond the volunteer group, though. It's made a massive difference to my development in different areas. So like I say, you know, not everybody wants to go into senior leadership in schools. And through the GA, I had opportunities to start presenting CPD sessions. I had opportunities to start writing. My first book that I wrote for the GA was called Go Global, and it's part of the GA Toolkit series. And then because I've written for the GA, then I have had opportunities to work with different publishers, being involved with you know, different organisations. But I always keep coming back to writing with the GA because it's, you know, it's just a great experience. I really recommend giving it a go writing for the journals. Honestly, there are people in this room that would encourage you, mentor you, support you. Richard is very, very keen to support people that want to write for Teaching Geography Journal and Primary Geography. There are so many people that will support you and mentor you. And like I say, you want to have different experiences as you go through your career, and this is the sort of thing you could do. Write a journal article, get support with it if you're a bit scared, or just get support anyway. It's great to run things by people and get feedback, and then you never know where it's going to take you. So I've worked with so many great people on these different projects. My most recent book for the GA is Teaching Climate Change. Very thrilled that it was a finalist in the curriculum improvement section of the Teach Secondary Awards in 2025. And a little bit of a plug for it. If you look on the GA publication stand, it's currently £10. And in fact, there are many discounts available on the GA publication stand. Go along and see what's up there. So many great things to see. So I was also involved recently in writing What is Geography Teaching Now, which was a real passion project for me. I worked with Jen Monk, and our aim was to involve people that are still in the classroom, writing for people that are still in the classroom, and I have been extremely proud of that project. And it's, again, wonderful to actually see quite a few of the authors in the room here with me today. Thank you for indulging me, and I hope you're also as proud of what we've created. So, yeah, so many opportunities out there. But don't forget local connections as well. We had, back in the olden days, we used to have, you know, your MEA, your local education authority that control the schools, and you would have a geography advisor in your MEA, and they would support people in developing their teaching, and you would have little conferences where all the geography teachers would get together and things like that. And then that got eroded over the years. Of course, schools becoming academies changed that a lot. A lot of those people had already gone before that happened, but it was a massive loss to lose those experts. So in a lot of areas, people started to think, what can we do so we can still be connected? And I'm down in the southwest, and so first of all, we did some work sort of more informally, looking at keeping the connections together. You'll recognise some of the faces in that picture there. And now we've got Amazing Geography Southwest, which is a project that some of you probably have worked on with Simon Ross, that keeps us connected, and we have a Geography Teachers Conference held in Bristol each year. I just think it's really, really important. We're geographers, let's think about different scales. How can we connect with people in our local area and support each other? And then you've got like the Geographical Association, which is, you know, on a national scale. How can we connect? How can we support each other? And then something that made a huge difference to me was being able to visit Uganda several times. And again, you're going to get fed up with me saying this, the GA was behind me being able to have this experience. We got some of the international initiatives funding for a head teacher called Benedict Sassi, a colleague of mine had worked in his school in Uganda, and Benedict came over here in 2015. And then I was able to visit Kampala with my colleague in 2016, 2017, 2018. And in 2018, we decided to run a baby little GAConf26. It was just a one-day event in one of the schools. And it was just absolutely amazing to be able to facilitate that. And we did speak at it, myself and my colleague, but we also made sure that we were just two of the people that were presenting, and made sure that we had the Ugandan teachers sharing their knowledge, because they had so many amazing ideas to share, and they hadn't really had that forum for getting together to share the ideas. Now they are well away, and what was really lovely is that during COVID, it was horrific in Uganda. They had the longest lockdown. They were locked down for about 2 years, and schools were shut and teachers were struggling, and the connections that they made between these different schools kept going through that time, and they were supporting each other, making sure the teachers who weren't getting paid were getting fed. And so, you know, this idea of working together is something that Benedict saw when he was in this country, went back, set up his own network. We supported him with that in, you know, whatever ways we could. I just feel like I've got so much out of that link, but I really hope that the people in Uganda also feel the same, that they've got a lot out of the link as well. So geography has made a massive difference to me, but does it make a difference to my students? They're so important, students, that's what we do it all for. And as I said, my catchment area is extremely varied. We have got massive differences in the nature of the catchment area. The red circle on there is my school, and the red area outlined on the map there is a big estate across the road from my school, and you can see it says there that that area is more deprived than 97% of neighbourhoods in England. So, you know, we're talking about pockets of deprivation, and I all the time need to be thinking about not just how does geography make a difference to my students, but how is it making a difference to those students that are particularly under-resourced, and how can it make more of a difference? And again, this links in with what he was talking about. We've seen an increase in poverty. We've got about a third of students in my school, slightly under 30%, that now are pupil premium students, which means that they are students that fit certain criteria, which are used as a proxy for social class often. And so we're definitely facing challenges, and I need to be thinking about those students when I'm thinking about whether geography is really making a difference. But we're coastal as well. And a lot of people have said to me, like, when people say, where did you take it up? Everyone will say, oh, yeah, coastal communities, it's a struggle sometimes, isn't it? Yeah. You can see a quote there from Guardian talking about the issues we've got in coastal communities with deprivation, poor mental health, poor transport infrastructure, and it's very interesting to reflect on why do we have such low aspiration. I've got a personal theory that it's too easy to get a job. A lot of my students are like, yeah, I can get a job when I leave school, no troubles. But the trouble is that job will be minimum wage and that job will be seasonal and they will be doing that job when they're my age. And that's not what I want. That's not what I want for my students. But it's a trap that's easy to fall into. So is it because you don't see the role models when you're in a coastal town? You're not like you're in a city and you might be in a poorer area, but you're looking up at the towers of wealth in the city. Is it to do with that? Also, issues of multi-generational poverty. I think you get that in a lot of areas, but we definitely see that in seaside towns. So it's really, really important to think about the difference geography is making to students in these different contexts. And so every student is going to be different, and we need to be thinking about what could be affecting them. Some of my students, a big issue is language. They may not have the vocabulary that they are needing to be able to be successful in the formal school setting. Maybe they are finding extended writing particularly challenging. But also, I teach in a tourist town, so nobody goes on holiday because they work in the summer. That's when all the tourists come there. So my students aren't jetting off to different parts of the world. Some of them are, but a lot of them aren't. And so they don't necessarily know about travel very much. They don't know much about lifestyles different to their own. They may have gaps in their learning. We quite often have students that moved out from Birmingham. In fact, some people call it Birmingham on Sea, because a lot of families enjoy their holiday in Birmingham on Sea, and then they relocate. And then quite often there's a gap between those children leaving one school and coming to another. And that can mean that that student is going to be finding it difficult to be able to cope. We can't just assume students automatically know how to study. Now, I come from an incredibly supportive family. My parents couldn't have wanted to do more for me, always encouraged me, but they hadn't done GCSEs and A-levels. They didn't know about things like study skills. That was something I had to figure out for myself. So the more we can do to support students really explicitly and how to be successful in these areas is great. And some students aren't going to have facilities at home and support for home learning. We have a fair number of students in my school who live in static caravans because we've got a lot of holiday plans. And, you know, it's challenging if you've got a family of, you know, a couple of kids and the parents living in a static caravan. It's not going to be easy to go home and have a peaceful space to do your homework. But we've also got the fear of failure, and I think this is becoming more and more of an issue. As more and more children are thinking, well, if I choose to not try, I can fail, and no one can tell me I'm a failure. Now, those of us that mark exam papers for the examples, we're seeing more and more questions just being left blank. We're seeing instead of giving it a go, I'll write a few things down, I might get some marks, people are just leaving the questions blank. And I think it's, you know, a lot of it's rooted in that fear of failure. And also, what have their past experiences been? Have they been socialised into having low expectations of themselves? And thinking about what Lee talks about, our biases. Do we sometimes have biases which affect those students? So I loved when Lee was talking in the public lecture yesterday about the strengths those students bring, because it is so true. Students that have grown up in adversity have got resilience, and it really annoys me when you see people saying like, oh, young people today, they're not resilient, because actually a lot of them have had to deal with a lot, particularly through lockdowns, through COVID. A lot of those young people dealt with a lot, and they have got resilience. And quite often, they're very good on collaborative skills, and they're quick thinking. Do you know what I mean when I say like they've got street smarts? You know, they can think on their feet, and that can be really handy for things like the unseen fieldwork paper at GCSE. They can look at something, they can weigh it up, and like, oh, yeah, I know what to do. But also, a lot of those young people are very empathetic. So we've got some real strengths that we can celebrate with students, and we need to look at all these students as individuals and think, what barriers are there that they may be experiencing, but also what strengths are they bringing, and how can I support these students? So there's a book called Miseducation by Diane Ray, and she talks about the disconnect between the working class students and educational establishments which can have very middle class values. And I thought this is really interesting, talking about the work of John Dewey here, saying that we need to value students' life experiences and use them as a foundation that we can build on. We need to have that connection. We shouldn't make assumptions about what they have or haven't experienced. And we can use their life as real and vital to the child as that which is carried out in the home. We can use that to help students go from the familiar to the unfamiliar. We can make learning real, we can bring in artifacts, images, video clips, and we need to be challenging misconceptions, we need to be getting students thinking. So some of the questions that I keep asking myself: what could limit my students' ability to make connections with the geography curriculum, and how would that affect their learning? Are there certain topics which are particularly problematic? And how can I take my students from their real and vital life to wider learning about the world? Now, I mentioned in Lee's lecture, I did a bit of shouting out when he was talking about ski slopes, coming up with questions, and I said, cruise ships. And those of you that teach AQA know, a couple of years ago, the pre-release was all about cruise tourism in the Caribbean. And my children don't know about that type of tourism. They know about tourism in Burnham-on-Sea, and it's very difficult to get them to unlearn what they know about tourism in Burnham-on-Sea so they can then interact with the pre-release. We need to be thinking all the time, what barriers are students facing and how can we support them? So, just a few ideas, because I'm going to run out of time, but just a few ideas. One thing that's hugely important, of course, is fieldwork. And yeah, you might recognise someone there, Ben. We do lots of field work in my school, which is in the local area. We don't organise trips for a handful of students to go to Iceland because we want to focus on everybody being able to go out and do field work. It's not just because of their geography, it's also really important for life skills. We take all of our year 7s to watch it, which is a bit further along the coastline, to take up into my head. And that's often the first time our children have been given money to go and buy an ice cream. They've never bought something for themselves. Miss, I've not bought an ice cream. Can you buy it for me? No, because there are 60 of you here. No. But I will support them in queuing up. I will support them with speaking to the lady that's serving the ice cream. Fieldwork in geography, I think, has never been more important because it's vital for geography, but it's vital for those life skills as well. So anything you can do to get young people out there and having different experiences is absolutely wonderful. You'll also notice 2 very young children in that picture. That's Jack and Megan. We used to do weekends away to Osmington for year 9, and yeah, I got my family along. Bless them. They put up with me. They put up with an enormous amount. Another way the geography makes a difference to students, which I think is really important at the moment in the current climate, is giving them an opportunity to discuss issues affecting their lives. I say there the issues facing us can seem scary. They are scary at the moment, aren't they? Some of the things we're seeing in the news at the moment are really scary, and we're adults. So what's it like when you are a child? What's it like when you are getting your messages from social media? When you're looking at things and you're thinking, oh my goodness, what sort of world am I growing up in? Is there going to be a future for me? But geography gives a place where we can discuss issues, and students might have the confidence to talk about what they're worried about. And when we're in a geography lesson, we can give them a framework to think about things. We can talk to them about fake news, and we can talk to them about, like, when the media starts scaremongering, and hopefully help them to be able to cope with this world that they find themselves growing up in. And at this point, just a quick shout out for Kit Rapley, who is around here somewhere, who has done some amazing work on the climate crisis and safeguarding, which I really recommend taking a look at. This is really important for students' well-being. Also, careers. I'm so grateful to those of you today that have talked about careers, because we can make a difference to our students by giving them really good careers advice. And Runa was saying earlier in her brilliant careers talk, she was saying we need to talk about money, we need to talk about pathways to get into the jobs, we mustn't shy away from it. The green economy is so important and growing. I've got a little example of the booklet here. These are free for you to pick up from the GA stands if you'd like to get one of the green skills booklets. And we've also got great resources that have been created by Time for Geography, the RGS. There is loads of great work going on, but hopefully this is going to grow and grow. Because not only do I want to do this because I want to benefit my students, I want to benefit myself, because we all know the research that says that intrinsic motivation is much more important for students than extrinsic. You can give them all the merit marks and stickers, and it's not going to make anywhere near as much difference as if they want it for themselves. So if they know where they're going, if they know what career they can go to, hopefully that can help with that motivation. But it's not easy. Those of you working in schools with high proportion of under-resourced students, I just want to recognise that it can be really challenging. I find big challenges sometimes. Your outcomes aren't going to be as high as in schools with students that are better resourced. Look at the Schools Week headlines here. Best performing schools have the fewest disadvantaged pupils. So we are facing in our system inequality, and it can be a challenge. But the GA, again, has made a difference, not just to me, but to my students. My students don't get to go out in the world so much, but the world comes to them. They have visitors. And you can see there some of the teachers that have come over with GA funding and have visited my school. And just a shout out to lovely Janelle, who is here from Nevis in the Caribbean, who applied for GA funding and got it and has come to our conference. But I was very lucky to welcome her into my home and into my school. And it's massive for my students to have those experiences. Get people to apply. Links on there. Quality mark has made a big difference. My department does not always get fantastic exam results, partly due to the nature of the school that I'm teaching in. So people might look at you and think, well, are you any good? Don't know. But you can gain a quality mark. And we gained Centre of Excellence status for several times in a row, celebrating the work that we were doing in our school. And you can say to students, look, this shows how special we are. Be proud to be part of this geography department. And it makes you feel better about yourself as well. So that has made a difference to me. And as president, I have been really lucky to have some great opportunities. I've been poking my nose in all over the place. I even poked my nose in all the way over to Northern Ireland. And so I went over to visit the Northern Ireland GA branch. It was a phenomenal experience. I went to my first visit to St Louise's Comprehensive College, a Catholic school just off the Falls Road, which is an area which has experienced a lot of challenges through very difficult times in the past, but it's still not easy there. They have 60% of their students have free school meals. And the school is incredible when you go into it. The students that were in the early years obviously had a very low awareness of the world by some of the things they were saying in the lessons. But the walls of the classrooms are plastered in maps, and the teachers are leaping around, pointing at things and bringing it all together, developing those students' learning. Absolutely inspirational, and actually their outcomes are phenomenal. I have to give a shout out there to Helen Keenan, who is the head of geography there, and that woman is absolutely inspirational. I then went to Queen's University and met amazing Niall in the picture there. And what happens with the GA branch in Northern Ireland is Queen's University hosts events, and students from schools like St Louise's, who are growing up in very challenging circumstances, they get to the point where it's quite normal for them to pop to the university and do a lecture, because it's been set up by this amazing GA group. And so you've got these connections that are really making a difference. And then I went to Ulydia Integrated College in Carrickfergus. Again, that is a school that is really making a difference. It's a school where Catholic, Protestant students are educated together, along with students of other religions or with no religion. And the words of the students were the most powerful things to show how that is making a difference into that school. a young man, I said to him, so what does it mean to you being in this school? And he said, well, I took my ashes the other day, and I learned that's where you get like a cross in ashes on your forehead. And he did that in a mixed community, and he said the respect from other students in relation to that was brilliant. He said he felt such a sense of belonging. So it was absolutely wonderful to see what was going on in Lydia. There's also a lot of work in environmental education going on, and I just have to shout out amazing Sandra Patterson, who is here, who is achieving incredible things. A word I heard a lot when I was at that school was intentional. All the time they're thinking about what they want to achieve and how they can work intentionally to achieve that. It was just something that I just keep reflecting on all the time now. I got to go out for pizza with the committee as well. I met a wonderful man called Stephen Royal, who's been a member of the branch for over 20 years. And it just makes you think about all these people that have committed so much of their time to the Geographical Association, whether in volunteer groups and branches. And his knowledge is phenomenal. It was amazing sitting with him and hearing his stories. And then we had a walk-up dinners. You can see a picture there of us and different teachers, not just from the branch committee, but other teachers came along, and we just had the best time, even though you're supposed to have a beautiful view of Belfast from that point. They tell me, I couldn't see it was drizzle, but we had the best time. And again, I need to do another shout out because Sophie Patterson, who's here today, she's on top of the trip point there. What a trooper, coming out with all these geography teachers, walking up the hill in the drizzle. It was amazing, and that visit has made such a difference to me, but also to the work that I'm doing in geographical education. So I'm just going to quickly go through a couple of last slides because I know you are going to be dying to get to the reception where we're getting cheese, chocolate and whiskey. But just a couple of other connections that I've been able to make that have really made a difference to me. Thank you to the Exeter GA branch for welcoming me along to your Teach Me and to meetings. That's a new branch that's just set up, and that takes a lot to do. Thank you. The education group for the Geographical Association, I've got a picture of there. I go to that group. I've been going to it for years anyway through my role in the volunteer group, but full of inspirational people working so hard to make a difference. But I have to say my hat goes off to the early years and primary face committee, the primary geography editorial board, and I got to go to Charlie. So you may have not heard of Charlie Manor Conference, but it is when a whole group of geography teachers get together for a weekend. I went along for a day. I do not have a great deal of knowledge about early years foundation stage and primary geography. I'm a secondary teacher. I just wanted to learn, and my goodness, have I learned a lot from these amazing people. Going to Charlie and hearing some of the discussions had me welling up. I was so emotionally moved by what people were talking about and the passion they were talking about and their determination to make a difference. It was absolutely inspirational. If you get a chance to go along and get involved, don't worry that you're a secondary teacher. Talk to the primary colleagues because they have got some amazing, amazing work going on. So just finishing off with a few thank yous. Thank you to past presidents. There are many of you in the room, and also I have some special ladies up on the screen there, but Jill isn't up there, and I hope Jill is in the audience here, because I just want to say, Jill, thank you, you've been an inspiration. Yourself and Susan Pike particularly said to me, God, Catherine, go for it. But also to Hina and to Denise. It's been amazing to see that someone can be both in the classroom and also be a GA president. And thank you, you've all made a really big difference. Thank you so much. I have to thank my department in my school. Thank you to my amazing team, but particularly Karen. So Karen is stood up in the picture there, and she is just the colleague that you dream of. It's not easy always teaching at the moment. A lot of you are probably thinking, yeah, it's not easy. Sometimes it's really tough, and Karen is the most amazing person to work with, and I just could not have a better colleague to celebrate the successes and commiserate over challenges with. She's absolutely incredible. And then thank you to my family. I'm so lucky. My family means the world to me. I'm so glad I've got Jack and Megan here. I'm so proud of what they've achieved. Jack has gained a Master's in Marine Biology last summer. Megan is studying geography at Emmanuel College, is in her second year, and Meg has also done a lot of work with Access, supporting children from disadvantaged or under-resourced backgrounds and being able to look at their university applications. I am so proud. I love my family so much. I'm so grateful for their support. So thank you for listening. Hopefully this has been somewhat entertaining and somewhat thought-provoking, and I hope that you are really enjoying the conference. I am loving this conference. I think it's got such a great vibe, and I just really hope that you're going to go home bursting with ideas about how geography can make a difference. Thank you.
Amazing. I'm really scared for next year now, following those footsteps, but that was so thought-provoking, and obviously we've learned so much about you as well, Catherine, and hopefully lots of you now will be able to join us in a celebration at the showroom workstation where, as Catherine said, there is cheese, there is chocolate, there is whiskey, but most importantly, there is the Teach Meet later, which we'd love you all to stay for as well. So if once you've got up and ready, you'll want to kind of follow the hordes down to that area, we would really appreciate that. But I think we need one more round of applause for the amazing Catherine.